All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Coach. We will go ahead and get started. Coach, if you want to just open up with a couple words about tomorrow's matchup, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Courtney, I missed that. What did you say?
Oh, good. If we just want to start with a couple words on tomorrow's game, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Yeah, sure will. Yeah, this is a really really talented team we're playing tomorrow. They played the hardest schedule in the country. It's an 8-point game with 10 minutes to go at Oklahoma. Really good Oklahoma team. Five of the first seven teams they played are tournament teams or projected to be tournament teams. And there's been a lot of games where they've been on the road. I mean, you look at who they played. Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, SMU, Washington, and then other really good mid-majors. This is as talented of a mid-major team as we played in 2 years. I have a lot of high major transfers. Um, and I think when you look at, obviously they're coming off a win against Illinois Chicago. And when you look at it, it's just, they played just a really, really hard. I think the hardest schedule in the country. And you look at their personnel, um, transfers from Oklahoma State and a couple SEC schools. So it's a talented group that's obviously been weathered by playing on the road, coming off their win the other night over Illinois Chicago.
Andy?
Coach, just real quick. Obviously Brandon Macklin had a shoulder injury, and you said he was going to be medically inspected when he got back on Monday. Just what's the status?
Yeah, Andy, we'll know more on him probably after shoot around on what his availability will be for tomorrow's game. Obviously, we know how important he is. If he can play, he will play, but we'll know more probably sometime tomorrow afternoon, depending on how he feels after shoot around.
Nick?
Chris, I'm curious, just in a general non-conference scheduling aspect, in your introductory press conference, you mentioned wanting to schedule a hard non-conference. I'm curious, do you still have that belief? And then how do you balance scheduling a bye game versus a home and home series that might draw a little bit better in terms of like an attendance number?
Yeah, I think oh, absolutely. We were our schedule next year that we're putting together is, by far the hardest one we've played. The one we have right now. We've just signed a home and home agreement with an ACC school that's projected to be a tournament team this year. Um, that'll be starting at Wintrust next year. So we obviously have Northwestern on the road. Next year's schedule will be our hardest. I think this year, I think when you look at the end of the year, um, a couple of the mid majors we played this year are more talented than any of the mid majors we played last year. Are just more gifted. And I think you'll see that being projected. I think a couple of these teams have a chance. Certainly, the one we have tomorrow have a chance to finish top three or four in the league. Um, but next year, yeah, we'll have likely, we'll swap one game, versus a mid-major with another high major opponent. And we also have an MTE, a couple MTEs we're talking to that have a great field. So, yeah, I think next year, and you'll see that with the schedule when it gets revealed, whenever that gets revealed, it'll be our most challenging to date for sure.
Joey?
Hey, Coach. So last week you guys went 1-1 in the Emerald Coast Classic. Just what was your biggest takeaway from, those two games against two good opponents?
Yeah, I obviously felt like we had really played a really clean, good second half against Georgia Tech, and felt really positive about that. And then, we just did not play well against LSU, and I think they had something to do with that. I really do, but we were not physical enough. We had some injuries, and we did not play our guys, a couple of our guys, the minutes they would normally play. But there's, I don't want to make excuses. They got us, and we did not play well, and they played really well. And the Georgia Tech game, I thought the first half we did some good things. We were really good defensively throughout that game, really good defensively. And then in the second half, our offense was really clicking against Georgia Tech, and really clicking. I mean, I think we put up 50 points. We shared it really well. Obviously made shots, but really played a clean, good defensive game the entire game, and an excellent second half offensively. So, that was encouraging. And then obviously you got a lot to take and a lot to learn from an LSU group that I think is talented. And I think that LSU team, when you look at who we played last year in the non-conference, that LSU team would have been our, I think they and Texas Tech were our two best non-conference teams we played in our 2 years here.
Ashley?
Hey coach, so before the season even started, I asked about team chemistry and you said that it was good, but you would know a little bit more about that once you guys went through some hard things together. I just wanted to follow up on that now and ask, how would you assess that team chemistry now?
I think it's evolving and growing. Yeah, I think it's still evolving and growing. And I think it's so early in the season for me to say I don't think it's poor by any stretch. I think we're still learning and kind of figuring out how that is and what that looks like. I still think you need more time to kind of go through stuff together. What are we, 8 games into the season? So about a fourth of the season through. But at this point, I feel good about it. I think it's got to continue to grow.
Scott?
Chris, last season you had some guys that were starters at the end of non-conference play, notably CJ and NJ. Are you trying to shorten your rotation as this non-conference play goes along in preparation for Big East play? How does that kind of work, balancing the rotation and figuring out your new starting lineup?
Yeah, I think Scott, I think the starting lineup could continue to be somewhat fluid. I don't know right now that the rotation, it might change a little bit. We obviously, we played a different kind of lineup in the LSU game. But I think we'll probably stick to around a 9 or 10 man rotation on most nights. I think that'll be pretty consistent. I think the fluidity of the starting lineup, I think that could look different on certain nights, and it's going to be dependent on, what I feel like is best for our group, what we feel like as coaching staff is best for our group, who's playing well, and who's practicing well, and what are their practice habits, and what's their commitment to the things we need to get better at. So I think at this point, there's been some guys that I think have really grown as players. I feel like Leighton Blocker continues to grow as a player. His second full year of being a full-time starter, and I think he continues to grow. And I think I continue to look for more of that growth from more guys. But I've been really pleased with that. And I think there's always guys when you have young guys, that are growing and coming. I think that's where you're always looking and saying, okay, could the minutes shift and change a little bit as they grow as players? We have a couple young guys right now, and Fabian and Cruz that are putting in the work, and they got to keep getting better. But we need to keep playing them, and they need to keep growing and practicing in games.
Nick?
Chris, I'm curious, with you mentioning the rotations and then mentioning with Ilya being the best shooter on the team, how do you kind of balance, the skill set of having an offensively talented player like him versus the defensive side of the floor when it comes to cracking that rotation?
Yeah, he's got to stay ready right now, Nick. I think he's one of those guys that just really got to stay ready. And he comes from being, a professional overseas. So he's got to stay ready. Um, it's so early in the season. Do I think he's someone that we could in a month and a half see him be in our rotation? I think it's possible, yes, because of his shooting. Um, I also think he's still kind of growing and figuring out kind of his way a little bit, um, and figuring out kind of how he can impact the program and what he does at both at this level and both over here. So I think he's still figuring that out some. He's got to stay ready and keep working, and that's our expectation for him. But he's someone that we're always looking at and saying, hey, is there opportunity for him?
Joey?
Coach, obviously you want to see, the defense improve as a whole. Have you kind of thought about going more zone, or kind of what's kind of the rationale with sticking with man-to-man defensively?
I think I wouldn't want to wholesale change 8 games into the season and scrap our man-to-man. I think it's so early in the year to do that. I do think we'll always have zone as a part of our package. Um, but I think you've probably seen. Are you asking that because you've seen us play more zone?
Yeah, I've seen the zone, so I'm just curious on like maybe going more zone, or what kind of the rationale with playing more man.
Yeah. I think it's going to be something we've got to continue to practice and get better at, and I think it's something you'll see. I think you saw in the last game we pressed some as well in the Florida trip. Um, so I think it's something that'll be a part of our package. Last year against certain teams, we played it a lot, right? Some Big East teams. But it's something we continue to work on and practice. I think it'll be a part of our defensive package, but by no stretch right now, or am I saying I want us to be an exclusive zone team. We have got to get better with our man-to-man stuff, and I believe we will.
Ashley?
Yeah, just what has been your message to the team following that game against LSU?
Get back to work and get better. Yeah, we've got to get back to work and continue to get better. That's really kind of what it's been. I think you look at um, that's what you look. You don't lie to yourself. Obviously, there have been you look at the last 2 weeks. There have been some games that have gotten away from a lot of teams as you look across college basketball. Um, so it's a reminder, and there was probably 15 examples in the last 2 weeks, high major to high major. It's a reminder if you don't come ready to play. Um, but we really just tried to look at ourselves and figure out how we can grow and improve and get better.
Nick?
Chris, I'm curious what you've seen from NJ after playing some opposing fives that have been a lot more physical. How do you think he's kind of fared, and how do you think like the playing those matchups in the non-conference is going to help him when conference play starts up in a couple weeks?
Yeah, I do think, Nick, I do think playing some of the guys, particularly this past weekend, um, it was Georgia Tech strengths, those bigs, and even though the young man was a freshman, he was going against the kid I believe he was a 5-star coming out of high school, so he's a talented kid. And then the LSU big was as physical as any big we played against. I think the next closest would be a Zuby, um, probably, or Terrace Reed. That level of physicality. So to your point, I think we challenge NJ. He's got to continue to get much more physical. He understands he's undersized at this level, and so does Fabian. Fabian needs to get more physical too. So both those guys have to get a lot more physical, and I'm confident that uh, they can continue to grow. I don't think they're ever going to be, at least in NJ's case, at this point, he's never going to be, you know, that's who he is. But I think he can improve in that. And I do think, to your point, that experience will prove helpful.
Scott?
Chris, the team's on winter break right now, and there's a little bit of a lull in campus and in things in general that other DePaul coaches have spoken about in the past. Do you change your routine at all? Does anything change with these 6 weeks where you don't have any classes and there aren't students on campus and things change a little bit?
I mean, you get more time, Scott, with your guys. You get a few more work. You got to be careful that you're not overwhelming them, right? But there's more time for film and video and opportunity to kind of have some one-on-one conversations. Um, I do think that's an advantage. Um, this week was getting better. And then it was also, like we talked about spending time preparing for a really talented Pine Bluff team. So, we focused, earlier in the week on us. Um, it's a little bit tricky when you have it played in a week because you want to be able to get in a rhythm again. Um, I think having some rest was good, but you also want to get in a rhythm. But there's no question what the break provides is just an opportunity just to have some more individual film sessions, some more collective film sessions, and then really, put time of, we spent a lot of time trying to improve in the areas we've needed to improve in this week.
Do we have any additional questions for Coach? All right, then. Thank you, everyone. We'll see several of you tomorrow.
Okay, guys, take care.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.